Webster Tarpley, break down in layman's terms where the world is today, the precipice we're at, and if you disagree that we're on the verge of what could be a World War III or financial collapse with QE Unlimited, and then get into what's happened with the ambassador, the rioting, the jihadis that they admit our government runs. Because if Obama put all the al-Qaeda in, why now are they turning against him? I mean, this is very complex. It's making my head spin. Dr. Tarpley, go ahead.
Why don't we just proceed methodically, and we can start with the attempted coup d'etat inside the United States, and then we can see what the ramifications might be in terms of October. The first thing to understand is the agency that's making the Middle East blow up is the Romney campaign. The Romney campaign in the broadest sense. And of course, the Romney campaign doesn't just mean, you know, this little clique of people in Boston. It means the entire complex of forces that want Romney in and Obama out. Now, in order to understand this, we've got to start with this CIA Mormon mafia. It's a faction in the CIA. It's a faction in the FBI. It's known the Mormons send the young men overseas for 2 years to be missionaries. They learn foreign languages. They come back. They go right into the CIA. And they had a protector in high places. For many years, this entire establishment was dominated by Henry Kissinger. But Henry Kissinger had a right-hand man, and that's Brent Scowcroft. And Brent Scowcroft was a top Mormon. So using this policy that they have of promoting their own people, mutual admiration society, it's kind of like the neocons. The upper reaches of the U.S. National Security bureaucracy are full of Mormons, and they realize that they want Romney because that will allow them to complete their careers at the highest possible level and have more power than they could have any other way. So CIA Mormon Mafia. Now, merged with that, as I've tried to point out, are the neocons. The neocons that were with Bush Cheney, some of them are more or less in the shadows. We got a whole new group of neocons. John Bolton is probably the one element of continuity, but we've got Dan Senior, we've got Robert Joseph, we've got Robert Kagan. We got a lot of these people, right? It's a whole different clique of neocons that want to get these posts. I call your attention to John Bolton, right? The guy with the mustache, looks kind of like a walrus. You've seen him on TV.
The guy who has very interesting admitted divorce papers.
I don't know about that, but he's the big hater of the United Nations, right? He's built his career as being UN ambassador and saying that he hated it. He couldn't get confirmed by the Senate, couldn't get confirmed by the U.S. Senate to be UN ambassador. All right, so this is one group. Now, separate from this, but allied, is, of course, Netanyahu and the Likud. And what we've had in this past week is this huge intervention by Netanyahu into U.S. politics in favor of Romney. Remember, Romney and Netanyahu are joined at the hip. They have been closest buddies since 1976 at the Boston Consulting Group when they sat together in the same cubicle. It's been an alliance all these years. Bibi gives Mitt advice about politics. Mitt gives Bibi advice about finance and how to design sanctions and so forth. And you saw Netanyahu coming out saying, you cannot give us a red light because you don't have a red line. So the United States is supposed to commit to war under some future eventuality. That would be unconstitutional, right? Because we do have this question of the Congress, right? So Netanyahu also, he doesn't have a red line. He has never said under what circumstances he would strike. So Netanyahu wants the U.S. to be more Israeli than the Israelis, to be all the way out in front on this crazy idea of attacking Iran. We also had the deputy head of the Israeli Knesset on Morning Joe on MSNBC.
Well, I'll tell you what, let me just stop you. I want to tell all the good old boys.
Calling for immediate war. Calling for immediate
Webster.
war. You got to let me finish the
No, I will, but I just want to add for all the good old boys that want to, start a war and think it's fun. I hope they enjoy $10 a gallon gas if the Strait of Hormuz gets closed. Go ahead. Yeah, and of course it's the sky's the limit with this stuff. So we've got the Mormon Mafia. We've got the neocons having joined the Romney campaign. You've also got to figure that the Saudis are in on this. I think the Saudis would rather have Obama out, Romney in. The importance of them is that they're the paymasters of these terrorist groups, right? The Al-Qaeda groups, the Wahhabite They're
groups,
the handlers.
The Salafis. They're the handlers, but they're also the guys who pay, right? Along with Qatar and with the United Arab Emirates and the rest of these reactionary monarchies in the Gulf. So what did they do? There are a number of sides to this thing. It's a multi-pronged faction converging on this, and they've got intersecting operations. Maybe we should start with this film. Now, the film is not the cause, but the film is the public relations cover. It's a kind of atmospheric that allows people to think they understand what's going on. So this is now the film, The Desert Warriors, and then it became The Innocence of Bin Laden, and then it became The Innocence of Muslims. And it's 15 or so minutes of garbage, right? It's scurrilous.
Stay there. We're going to come right back, Webster. And we've got a hard break here for news. When we come back, we'll look at this. By the way, Webster Tarpley wrote the unauthorized biography on Obama. To be clear, he doesn't like Obama. This is not a political hack up here. See, our love of the truth, our love of what's really going on, that comes first. You're not going to hear this anywhere else, which is kind of scary. This is really amazing stuff we're watching happen. We'll be back. So you've laid out some of the pieces here. Tell us what the game plan is from all your sources there in D.C., where you live there, next to D.C. in Maryland, and where you see this going and what the larger strategy is to strike Iran. Is it purely political, or is Israel really worried about nuclear weapons?
The essence of the strategy right now is to put Romney in the White House, and then Netanyahu gets everything he wants, with war or without war. A lot of the war talk right now is a hype to try to get people to stampede in the direction of Romney. But let me just go back. This film, okay, the film that we started to talk about, the key guy in the group of people around that film is this guy Nasrallah, the Coptic Christian. And he leads you directly into the so-called Islamophobia network. It leads to a group of people that includes Pamela Geller. It's an organization called Stop Islamization of America Now. There's one called Stop the Islamization of Europe Now. There's Stop the Islamization of All Nations Now. It's an international network. They've got that guy Geert Wilders from Holland, Islamophobic race baiter. But you go from Nasrallah to this Islamophobia network, and who do you find in the middle of the Islamophobia network? John Bolton, top neocon and likely Secretary of State in a Romney administration.
Sure, all this goes without saying, Webster, that,
I don't know
that it's a cartoon. I mean, it's just like the Muhammad cartoons put out by the neocons, and the media covers it, so the Muslims burn down half of Europe, so they have a pretext to then invade more.
4. Bolton spoke on WMAL radio here in Washington this week. Here's Politico. And he says, I come back to Tehran in 1979. If we're not careful here, we're going to see a repetition of that crisis, which was, of course, a major factor in contributing to the destruction of the Jimmy Carter administration. So it's clear what they want to do. They've been managing Obama on a Carter plan up to now, right? The trilaterals, the Bilderbergs, all these people, Wall Street. And now they want to get him out. And in order to get him out, what do you need? Well, what got Carter out? A hostage crisis and an October surprise. In the case of the October surprise, it was to prevent Carter from freeing the hostages, right? The famous negotiations of George H.W. Bush, Bush the elder, talking to the mullahs in Iran, telling them, don't free any hostages, deal with us later on. I think they learned to regret this. So there is no doubt that the film is essentially a production of the Romney campaign. Now let's go to the death of the ambassador, right? This Arabist ambassador, new Arabic, new French. This is J. Christopher Stevens. Why would he be killed? Well, first of all, you get many signals of an inside job, right? He was, according to the things I've seen, he was not at the actual consulate. He was over at a safe house nearby, which should not have been known to the people attacking the consulate, whatever that was. But it was known, and they began attacking with mortars, right? People have talked about the professional, coordinated, high-level quality of the attack on the safe house, which eventually killed Ambassador Stevens. Who killed him? Well, the indications coming out of Libya is, of course, it was planned, and it was carried out by an organization called Ansar al-Sharia. And the head of that is a guy called Kumu, Q-U-M-U, M-U, Kumu. So this guy Kumu is a graduate of the Guantanamo Bay training school, because that's what's going on in Guantanamo now. Guantanamo, one of the reasons Obama couldn't close it, it's used for training, because they let these people out after they've been carefully prepared to do what they want to do. There was this guy, Shiri, was let out. He created Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. He's now, I think, been killed a couple of weeks ago.
No, it's a training camp under the cover.
A training camp. So Cuomo is a CIA asset. And Cuomo then goes and kills the U.S. ambassador. Now, that's where I'd say, call the Mormon Mafia and ask them what's going on with that, right? Why is a CIA asset killing a U.S. ambassador, right? Why did they?
Do you agree with Pachinik, Dr. Pachinik, that it was Israel, the Lakudniks with Saudi Arabian intelligence? Because why is...
I'm telling you, it's the CIA Mormon Mafia. Let's get right to the heart of the matter. Without the CIA ran that guy. He was trained in Guantanamo to do what the CIA wanted. Always beware these people who are telling you, oh, blame somebody else. Blame somebody, you know, blame somebody.
Got it. All right, but let's talk about, hold on, Webster, let's talk about then Obama. Why is he having the ambassador go out on TV and say, oh, this wasn't coordinated. It was a few protesters. You know, and Obama called people and everything's fine now. Why is Obama playing in to the lie then?
Well, Obama, of course, is a feckless puppet, right? Obama's a Wall Street puppet. I think Obama has figured out by now that his former patrons and masters have decided to dump him. That's what makes this moment so interesting. It's a little bit like Harry Truman in 1948, right? The reactionary Wall Street people wanted to dump him, but somehow he was able to stay on. So I think people have to go.
All right, give us big picture. Where is it all headed? I mean, the intel we're getting is
it's headed towards a seizure of power by Romney and the neocons. Now, what does that mean? It means another reversal of the field, right? Remember, we had Bush, Cheney, neocons, war in all directions, bomb them, invade them, rivers of blood for the U.S., you know, tremendous expenditures. And then we had Obama, and Obama says, no, I do it all with color revolutions. I do it all cheaply. He has drones. He has special forces. He did have the one bombing.
That's the Pentagon model. That's why the Pentagon likes Obama.
The Divine Plan. It's a CIA plan. CIA. It's a guy called Divine. So it's not the Divine Plan in the sense of God, but it's D-E-V-I-N-E. And this is what they're carrying out. Now, the neocons,
which is Brzezinski.
The neocons say that's not good enough. We want to start, you know, smashing more people. And they also say the Russians and the Chinese continue to defy us. We just had 30 countries meeting in Tehran as friends of Syria. We just had 130, 140 countries meeting in Tehran. They're saying their strategy isn't working. So the idea would be to reverse the field and go back to a warlike, aggressive foreign policy, and for that they would like Romney and the neocons and Secretary of State John Bolton, who's got his fingers in this movie somehow.
Yes, absolutely. Now let's talk about where all this goes, though, with the Iran strike. I mean, they don't have the police running around digging in for World War III for nothing. They're not buying 1.4 billion bullets for Homeland Security to play tiddlywinks. Webster, we got about 10 minutes left. You got the floor to take us out. Pull back. Give us the big picture here. Where is all this going? How serious is the Iran strike threat? What should we expect if there is that strike?
Well, just remember, the Iran strike would be best conducted from the point of view of the ruling class by Romney with the neocon administration. Now, there is the problem of Obama right now that they'd like to get rid of. One of the problems in their way is that the Romney campaign is so stupid, so bungling, and so inept. They could have come out of this week with a big advantage, and I'm not sure they've come out with any. The hope that they have is that they'll make up for it in coming weeks. When this stuff began to happen, when you had the demonstration at the U.S. Embassy in Cairo, Egypt, and then you had the killing of a consular official, as they heard it, in Benghazi, Libya, and the terror corridor, right? The Benghazi, Derna, Tobruk terror corridor. That's when Romney decided to shoot his mouth off, right? He had said, oh, 9/11, I won't say anything. I'll have an embargo. But but he couldn't restrain himself because Romney had written a book called No Apologies, and he obviously the neocons had ghostwritten the book for him, right? It's the Republican talking point that Obama apologizes all the time. It's not really clear that that's true, but this was something. Romney was Pavlovian dog, trained to react to this. So as soon as somebody said, we regret, or, we don't believe in this, Romney seized on that and said, all right, you're apologizing. So he had to put out this very badly timed press release, right? And there is a question with Romney, even with the ruling class on his side, can he get himself elected, right? Because he's such a bungler. Now,
or let me add this point. I've got to ask this. We'll talk about it more tomorrow. Could the Obama-controlling faction of the globalist, could they go ahead and launch the war or authorize Israel to as their own October surprise? I see it more of two camps fighting over who gets to launch the war and be the hero.
There is this question, right? There is the complication of the rally round effect. In other words, the neocons, I think, they've shown their political stupidity repeatedly in practice. And Netanyahu, in terms of international politics, has shown how stupid he is. But the point is, if you have a big international crisis, most Americans will rally around the president, whoever that is. And you can see that even under Carter, right? Carter, when you had the Desert One, right? The failed attempt to rescue the hostages in the spring of 1980. Carter got a bounce out of that helped him win the Democratic primaries against Teddy Kennedy. So they're playing with something which is a problem for them. But I think underneath it, it's not so much the election that they're worried about right now, although they want to win the election for Romney. It's how could you get Obama to endorse an attack? You have to stampede him. And the idea with that is the big danger of the Israeli attack on Iran, or maybe somebody attacking Syria, right? Maybe some European country, NATO country, right? Maybe France, something like this, attacking Syria. This could then be used to browbeat Obama and get him to do things that I don't think he wants to do, not because he's a patriot, but because of his very narrow interest in staying in power and not screwing up his relations with his own base. So if you're going to have an attack and you want to stampede Obama, you got to do that in the last week, 10 days, 2 weeks maybe, before the election, so that you can tell Obama, if you don't join in this attack, you'll be denounced as a traitor.
I agree, and the reason I raise this analysis is that's what I see happening here. The minute it started, it's two-way, and I agree. It's CIA or a faction that's neocon connected in the final equation that did do this with command and control and handling by the Saudis, as you said. So in a way, you do agree with Pachenik, but correct me if I'm wrong. The issue here is that they've got to stampede the kind of Chicago mafia Clintonista arm into politically not being able to deal with burning American flags, embassies attacked, U.S. troops killed, ambassador killed. And so the CIA is in control of that al-Qaeda network they used to take over Libya and now part of Syria. And so they're in control. They're like, hey, Obama, we just had this network, attack some of your holdings. We're going to blame you now for not responding. So it is clear who's running this channel. The question is it going well for those factions? Will they now double down and intensify the destabilization program?
Well, as I say, the ineptitude and bungling of Romney is right now a factor in world history in its own right. That his obvious play this past week was to shut up, don't say anything, and let Obama take the heat for what's happening, right? Because everybody would then turn around and blame Obama. But Romney had to get himself in the middle of it, and half the Republicans then turned against him. But again, these are not the main things. I think the idea is to create hysteria. Now, you're talking about these police chiefs and others being told that something big is going to happen. Consider this. In recent world history, we have the so-called pre-Munich plot, right? That Chamberlain wanted to appease Hitler. He wanted to give Hitler everything he wanted. And in the various series of meetings that we think of as the Munich process, right, the Munich sellout, there were three meetings at least.
Got a minute and a half left.
In the middle of all this, Chamberlain creates this hysteria, right? Chamberlain wants to sell out to Hitler. So he has start digging trenches in the park, give everybody a gas mask, convince them that war is at hand, and then they'll support whatever you do. Now, it could be that this intelligence agency faction, and again, I stress,
no, I agree with you. They're always telling people that this is coming. It's just I've never seen this level of chatter. Plus, B-1 bombers, B-2 bombers, 25 nations fleets massing while the dollar begins to implode. I mean, Webster. So you're saying you're not worried about an Iran strike?
Oh, I'm worried. I'm worried about a Syria strike, perhaps even more. I think the Syria strike would have to be the prelude to the Iran strike.
Sure.
I think that's the one that's more on the
got to take it out first. And you were just in Syria recently. We're going to talk about this tomorrow, Webster. Amazing. I have to say I agree with your analysis from all of my research. This is a very dangerous time because I think the ruling class is even fighting with each other. And it's good to have separation of powers, but man, this is crazy. What is the time? Of
course, you've got this ongoing financial collapse in the background, right? You've got you always have to figure that the biggest danger at any point in the year is this September-October period, right? The transition from the third quarter to the fourth quarter because of all the traditional payment deadlines and everything together with that. So we've got Spain on the brink, right? These Spanish states, right? Catalonia, Andalusia going bankrupt. Draghi saying that he's going to provide support for the bonds, but only if you agree to the IMF conditionalities. Yeah, and now we've got this the QE3. The QE3 would have been a help to Obama, but I think it's coming too late for Obama. So I still think that the ruling class is in favor of Romney, not Obama, and that becomes a very important.
Well, sure, it shows how petty they are that as soon as Romney attacked Bernanke and said he would get rid of him, Bernanke then did the QE Unlimited. We're going to talk about it tomorrow, Webster, in depth. We'll start tomorrow on the financial situation. 11 a.m. Central tomorrow, Infowars.com, PrisonPlanet.tv, Tarpley.net's your website. Thank you so much, Webster, and thank you to all the listeners for listening and taking action. Good job, crew.